Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the digital asset investor, and we've got blowers outside. We're dealing with that issue. We're also dealing with the fact that I'm hungry, I haven't eaten anything yet, and we've got a bigger problem, much bigger problem here, and that is that I ran out of coffee. I'm on my I just got my last cup of coffee. I am out. This is a problem. This means I got to go do something I hate doing, which is going to the grocery store. Oh, all right. You know why I don't like the grocery store is that when you go to the grocery store, it's like in a small town. It's like I just want to go in there and get my groceries, and it's like you keep seeing people you know, and you can't get out. I need to start going shopping like somewhere like 10 miles away is what I need to do. Some people love it. I mean, I like my wife and I know one of her friends, they'll go to the grocery store. It's more like a social event. They want to stop and talk to everybody. Usually when I'm going, it's to go in quick, get some food because I'm hungry, and then get out. XRP Las Vegas is coming up, and do not forget, you've got, it's the 28th. You just got a couple of days left. Anybody who buys a general admission ticket until the very end of March is going to be that person. We're going to draw one person of the people that bought tickets in the last, say, 10 or 15 days up to the last day of March. We're going to draw one, and that person and their plus one, Brad Combs and I in Vegas at XRP Las Vegas, we are buying you dinner, a nice dinner. It's not going to be, don't worry, it'll be a top tier dinner.
The countdown continues to XRP Las Vegas 2024. Hotel discounts at the MGM Grand are closing. Book your room by April 2nd. Former Ripple employee and senatorial candidate from Nevada, Greg Kidd, added to the speaker lineup. Jason Cousins, Lynette Zhang, and Andy Scheckman on stage, talking everything gold, CBDCs, and tokenization. Don't miss the largest XRP conference. Special thanks to sponsors iTrustCapital, Link2, and Uphold. All tickets purchased from now to the end of the month will be entered to win an all-expense-paid private dinner for you and a guest with Digital Perspectives, Brad Kimes, and DAI. Get your tickets now at xrplasvegas.com. Don't miss out.
Okay. Also, folks, I actually talked to Brad yesterday, and I can tell you that if you're you better hurry up if you haven't already, because I can tell you he's about to break the record for last year, and there's like not much time left. So, and last year when they sold out, it sold out like pretty close to around this time, as I recall. Mark Yusko, the Bitcoin Maxi, is on CNBC doing what they do, promoting Bitcoin.
So you're forecasting Bitcoin to 150,000 in the next year or so. Can you explain how you get to that math?
Yeah, so it is just math. So we look at the fair value today from the Metcalfe's law model. That gives us round numbers around 50,000. The halving occurs in 3 weeks. What a halving does, it cuts the block rewards, the amount of money that's given to the miners to secure the network. If those rewards were to get cut in half, as they do, many of the miners would struggle. So historically, what has happened, the price rises, the fair value rises. So that would push it at 100. But this time it's a little different in that instead of just block rewards, we get transaction fees because of ordinals and inscriptions. So let's say the fair value only goes to 75 this time. Then post-halving, you get a lot of interest in the asset, a lot of people FOMO in, and we normally go to about 2 times fair value in the cycle. So in the last cycle, fair value was 30. We got as high as 68, 69. This time, I think probably 2 times because there's less leverage. So that gets us to 150.
So what's that path like to 150? Because I know that last summer you had called for a blow-off top in 2024, and we haven't seen that. Is that still to come before we get to that 150?
So the big move happens post-halving. So the halving occurs sometime between April 20th and April 21st, most likely. So once that occurs, then you start to get an increase in demand, right, from the ETFs and other people interested. But the supply of new coins goes from 900 a day to 450. Well, think about it. If there's more demand than supply, price has to rise. So the price starts to rise. It starts to become more exponential or parabolic toward the end of the year. And historically, about 9 months after the halving, so sometime toward Thanksgiving, Christmas, we see the peak in price before the next bear market.
So, Mark, Bitcoin gets the headlines, MicroStrategies and equity Coinbase. What are other things out there, equity or other coin?
That is very interesting that 9 months after the halving is typically where you see the peak.
That you're looking at that nobody's talking about.
You know, it is so hard because...
All right, we won't fool with any more of that. Now, Jay Clayton was on CNBC this morning to talk about antitrust and weigh in on, he says when antitrust policy is used for political reason, you get away from consumer welfare. You get into dangerous territory. I agree, Jake. Jake, happens that back during ETHgate, I put this antitrust video together because of what Jay Clayton and Bill Hinman did.
Ask yourself, where do monopolies come from? In the United States, the most important and the strongest monopolies are unquestionably those that derive from governmental privilege.
They consider the Ethereum network token and issuance mechanisms to be decentralized, and therefore no transactions involving those particular assets are considered to be transactions of securities. They have not said the same thing about other tokens, the Ripple token, for instance, and they were clear that they were going to come out with statements to sort of assess these different tokens, and I believe they've made all the statements about decentralization that they're going to make.
What private monopolies there are that have been able to maintain themselves over any long period of time without government assistance, period. And the second was the New York Stock Exchange. Not more recently, because since 1934 it's had the help of the SEC.
Which islands were we going to buy, and what were we going to do with these hundreds of millions of dollars that people were going to drop on us? So I drove lots of the legal work. We got a piece of paper in our pocket before we actually launched the token sale.
But almost every other case, you have temporary monopolies develop, and if the government doesn't come in to shore them up, they fall to pieces.
The SEC has been very clear that, I guess Jay Clayton, Commissioner Clayton, indicated that they wouldn't grandfather anybody, that big surprise, they're going to enforce securities law. We happened at a moment in time when securities regulators around the world were not watching, and we became sufficiently decentralized.
I don't think Ether is decentralized. I think it's fully functional, but I don't think it's decentralized. But the chairman, the division director said it's decentralized. So, hey, look at the metrics for Ether. And, hey, you did a little better than that. Hey. Then why is it Ripple? Yeah.
And you can go down the line and find that one hypothetical monopoly case after another derives from governmental assistance.
There you go. I think we laid it out. Look at this from eGrad Crypto. Gold to 3K. It's leaving the macro range. I like the sound of that. I'd like a 3K gold. And then he says, XRP, I don't know about guaranteed. I don't like guaranteed. 6 times to 10 times. I think it's highly likely, but I don't know about guaranteed. Green, he's got $4 to $5.50 on here. I like the sound of that. Now, this was Larry Fink. He was on with Liz Clayman and our buddy Charles Gasparino yesterday.
Look, I'm very bullish on the long-term viability of Bitcoin.
I was going to say, did that surprise you?
That surprised me how much that's gone up. I mean, look, it is we're creating now a market that has more liquidity, more transparency, and I'm pleasantly surprised, and I would never have predicted it before we filed it, that we were going to see this type of retail demand.
So you thought you'd do good, but not this good.
I thought, yes.
Well, iBid is your ETF over at iShares.
Yes.
It's about to overtake Grayscale, which was in the business certainly a lot longer. You look at the gains since January 11th when it first came about.
Yes.
Have you ever seen this much inflow this quickly into
iBid is the fastest growing ETF in the history of ETFs.
Yeah, imagine if you did one on a digital asset that actually had utility, Larry. Then you could see some real record-breaking stuff. Then this is a clip where he was asked about whether they could do an ETH ETF. No, this is a first.
It is your ETF over at iShares.
Yes.
It's about to overtake
Right, we got that
this
part.
much inflow this quickly.
It's as fast as I get in the history of ETFs.
So Ether is next with an ETF?
We'll see. That's under registration.
Okay, so let's just not talk about your product.
Right.
Talk about Ether. The SEC, there's lots of noise about them declaring Ether a security, which would take it out of the Bitcoin category as a commodity. How does that translate into an ETF?
I don't think that, look, I really can't talk about it, but I don't think that designation is going to be that deteriorous to.
Oh, really? So even if it's a security, you can start an ETF, an ETH ETF?
I think so, yeah.
Well, that's wild.
So we got a financial locomotive.
Now, Charles Gasparino today, I saw a tweet this morning where he flat out lied and said that when Larry Fink was on with him last time, that Larry Fink said that there's not going to be an XRP ETF or something like that. That's not what he said. What he said was he couldn't talk about it. Similar to how he just said he couldn't talk about ETH. But I don't know why. I mean, Charles Gasparino, if you go back and you look at Charles Gasparino's tweets, you can see a very, very specific time when he was turned to where he started taking a negative take on Ripple and XRP. And this guy, there's reason. Look, folks, these people in New York that have been there for too long, the way this works is very simple. They don't get any new. They're told, hey, you want to keep getting scoops? You're gonna go this way. That's how this game works. Now, this is a video that was actually sent to me yesterday by the official cool guy of the Digital Asset Investor channel, Mr. Intuitive, he had some stuff going on. He's been off social media for a while, but he said to tweet this out. So I said, of course. This is Craig DeWitt, formerly of Ripple, who was looking into his crystal ball, and I am in line with what he's saying.
The ruling comes out in such a way that XRP is alone cleared as a non-security in the United States. Meaning that with all the other stuff that the SEC is pulling, suing exchanges, suing other coins, they're going to sue some big ones as well, that only BTC and XRP have legal clarity in the United States for a 2-year period.
Whoopsie. That'd be a script flip, wouldn't it? Now, Meta Lawman was on Scott Milker's program, and he's talking here about the problem with the SEC's damages theory. You know, everybody's like, oh, Ripple's going to pay $2 billion, and that's the end of them, and they're going to dump all the tokens and all that. Well, there's a little problem with the legal theory here, folks.
The bigger argument here, in my view, is Ripple caught a very, very lucky break recently. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals ruled at the end of last year that in order for there to be disgorgement, there have to be victims of the fraud, victims of the securities law violation. There has to be something called pecuniary harm, and that means losses, actual losses. So when you read the SEC's filing on their damages theory, they have a heading saying, hey, no problem, there's pecuniary harm here, but they don't actually identify a single purchaser of XRP who lost money. What they say is some purchasers, and remember, we're talking about sophisticated institutional buyers, hedge funds, VCs, whales buying XRP, and they bought at discounts and then presumably sold, not the next day, but periodically. And so the SEC says some of the buyers got a lower discount than others, and therefore they were pecuniarily harmed, which does violence to that term. There have to be actual losses, and they do not identify a single quote unquote victim institution that lost money in their deal because they bought all of this XRP at some significant discounts. Yeah, and just to tie a bow on it, this concept of disgorgement, while it is a party who's done something wrong, issued an unregistered security, is supposed to give back their net profit from doing that, that money is supposed to go to victims, not to the Treasury. And so if there are no victims, the entire rationale for the disgorgement goes away. And
let me translate. The only way for this judge to, on that disgorgement, to rule for Ripple to pay anything based on what he just said, the court would have to be crooked.
There's no disgorgement, by the way, Scott. Then there's no $200 million in interest. Right. Interest triggers off of disgorgement, and
so that knocks out 1.1 billion right there of the 2 billion they were asking for.
That would go away. Now, caveat is you could still have a penalty in the absence of victims and a disgorgement judgment, but it would be weird for an $850 million penalty in a situation where there's no disgorgement, no victims, no restitution fund, no nothing. That would be pretty odd. And so the court then would have a lot of discretion in establishing what the penalty might be. And I think it'd be substantially lower than that 850.
I love the sound of that. Check this out. Here's all our U.S. businessmen hanging out with the CCP president. You know, what they like to do over there in China is wire all their hotel rooms and blackmail our businessmen and politicians. Hope those guys stayed in the U.S., but I don't think they did. By the way, I wanted to give a shout out to all the VCs. Remember, in the Coinbase case that is now going to go the distance, and they're going to have to go through what Ripple did, one of the tokens named is the one that the VCs and their media assets have been pumping for the last few weeks, Solana. It's named in there as a security. And so I said, well, shout out to all you VCs who have been pumping Solana with your media assets the same way you did Bitcoin and Ethereum for all these years. Maybe it's time you focus your pumping on the only digital asset with legal clarity, possibly for the next 2 years, according to Craig DeWitt, XRP, the one. And then I like this. Hey, Sean McBride, who used to work at Ripple, would you mind telling us your honest opinion? What you think this year brings for Ripple? Any answer would be awesome. I get there are certain things you can't talk about. I think you'll see a lot more after the decision in the case. If it's positive, even if the SEC appeals, things will blast off for Ripple, in my humble opinion. Then we had this come across, was it yesterday or today? Yeah, it's 2 or 3 days ago. SWIFT planning to launch new central bank digital currency platform in 12 to 24 months. Now, the guy mentioned in here that runs SWIFT's program is Nick Kerrigan. Tell you a story. I went and started looking for Nick Kerrigan videos. Reminds me of Nancy Kerrigan. If you've never seen the ESPN 30 for 30 documentary on Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan, I recommend that you do. They were the figure skaters where Tanya Harding's friends or whatever hit Nancy Kerrigan in the leg or something with a baseball bat to try to take her out of the competition. Anyway, I looked up this Nick Kerrigan he's the head of innovation at SWIFT. And I was looking for videos, and I just happened to bump into a Cybos 2023 video. And in that video, the lady, her name is Ryan Rugg, who runs Citi's digital asset division. She said a very curious thing. She used a term that would be very familiar to all of you XRP fans out there. In DAIXRP.com, I'm going to play you that clip. And it's kind of like an aha moment in this clip. So we're going to go in there now, and I'm going to play that clip for you. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family. Go in DAIXRP.com. I've got the discount link to XRP Las Vegas there at the very top of the page in there when you get in there. So go get your discount. They're going to be running out of rooms also at the MGM Grand pretty fast. You better go grab them. All righty, here we go.